Hey everyone, this is Melissa with Nafnang here. Thank you for joining us today for our SEO webinar. Really excited to have David Jenyns here from Melbourne SEO. He'll be talking to us about everything that a blogger needs to know about SEO and your blog. We'll get started here in just a minute, but if you can have a look at the control panel on your right-hand side, have a look and see in the question section if you are able to answer a question. Just tell me, write the word yes if you can hear us okay. Just go ahead and type your answer in, everyone. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes. Excellent. Great. So throughout the presentation, you'll be able to ask questions in this section of your control panel, or you can also share any questions or comments you've got via Twitter using the hashtag #BloggerSEO. We'll be holding our questions until the end of the presentation, but Dave will be going through answering everything he can in as much detail as possible. And let me just make sure all is good. Excellent. Great. Well, Dave, if you're ready to roll, I see a couple more people still rolling in, but let's go ahead and get started.
Excellent. Yeah, let's jump in. I know we've got some limited time and lots of ground to cover. So, Melissa mentioned, I want to talk about getting more Google love to your blog and making sure that it ranks highly and we get traffic through to it. That's really what SEO is all about, search engine optimization. So as way of starting, my company, Melbourne SEO Services, and we've got a sister company called Melbourne Video Production, I actually got first interested in marketing and online marketing because a friend and I had created a home study course to train people how to use a particular charting software. So my previous life, I was really interested in the stock market niche, and we were helping people use a package that basically charted stocks. And people would get stuck with this program, so we created the home study guide to help them overcome some of these problems. And we found we had this almost like a knack, the ability to take complex ideas and then break them down into very simple, understandable, step-by-step processes. And one thing that I noticed was the guide itself sold very well in the immediate community, the people who knew what we were doing, and friends and family and their friends. But beyond that, we had real trouble getting the word out about our product. We knew it was great, and we wanted to get it into the hands of as many people as possible. And that's really when it kind of dawned upon me that I need to learn more about marketing. And it started off learning about offline marketing, and then that evolved to online marketing, and particularly SEO. So SEO is all about search engine optimization. That's what it stands for, and that's about making sure that we optimize our website to appear in the search engine results, so in Google and on Bing and Yahoo and some of the other search engines. So we created a methodology for the way that we were promoting our product, the Metastock Programming Study Guide. And we got some really good results, and I realized we were in a really competitive space. The stock market niche is a very competitive space, and for that reason it makes it hard to try and rank for particular keywords. And I didn't recognize it right at the time, but we'd developed a pretty sophisticated way for the way that we were ranking our websites and our products. Now, there was a bit of a crossroads that we reached when my business partner, who I created the product with, decided to head in one direction and I headed in the other when they made some changes in Australian financial law as to what information you could give without being licensed. And he decided he was going to go in one way, and then I thought, well, we've built up this team, we've built up this methodology for how we rank websites. Let's set up a business that helps small and medium-sized business owners and bloggers and startups get their websites more visible online, because a lot of people have a great product or service or a great story or message that they want to get out there. They just need to get it in front of the audience, and they don't know how. And when we first started, we got some really great results. And this is when I really started to recognize the methods that we developed in a hyper-competitive space, the stock market niche. When you brought it over to some other spaces, they were incredibly effective. And that's really what I want to try and share with you today, is the methods that we use for ranking websites. So you can cherry pick the best ideas, see what will fit with your website, and start to implement it into your blog so you can get more traffic, more attention, get a larger readership, which is really the reason why you set up a blog, to get that message out there. So that's what we're going to go through. And the actual plan for today, the outline of what we'll cover, is I'll firstly give you a little bit of an overview about the way that Google works, just so you understand the fundamentals behind the machine. A lot of people don't actually know, well, how does Google determine what is the best result, or what website should they bring up when people are searching for a particular phrase? And then once you understand those fundamentals, the building blocks, I'll then tell you the way that SEO works and how we can then do things that puts our website in the best possible light for Google, which gives us the best chance of ranking and coming up for the keyword phrases that we're looking for. Then I want to give you some step-by-step processes that you can follow, and almost right at the end, like an action plan, so you can say, right, here are the 3 things that I can do and work on over the next few days or week that are going to make an instant impact to the traffic through to my website and how it's actually performing. And then we'll also have some time for Q&A. Now, if you do submit some questions along the way, we'll probably bulk most of them towards the end, but I know Velissa's got her team, Yelena and Haley, who are keeping an eye on those question boxes. So if there's something that's really relevant and pertinent to a particular slide, still type it in, and if there's the right space, I'm sure we can try and answer it there. So that's the plan for what we want to cover today. So let's get started with the first thing about how Google actually works. And I've got a little bit of a graphic there to try and visually represent it. Basically, you've heard this idea of the World Wide Web, and the reason the web got its name as the World Wide Web is because it's the if you imagine a whole lot of different websites and pages and posts scattered around on the internet, and each post can links and connects to another post. Inside a post, when you write a post or a page on your site, that might link to somewhere else. It might be another area on your website. It could be to another website, on a completely different domain name. But those links, which are usually the blue underlined words, that is almost like you're linking 2 pages together. And what that does, if you imagine the web visually in your mind's eye, imagine a whole lot of pages connected together, almost like those blue circles that I've got on the graphic there, and they're connected by these links, and that creates like a web, this web of interconnected pages and linking to each other. Now, that's the reason it's called the World Wide Web. Now, what Google does is they have a spider, and you may have heard of the idea of a search engine spider, and that's just a robot that crawls this web of interlinking pages and posts and discovers new pages. So this spider is crawling around the web, and then it basically reports back to Google. Google has this index software where this spider discovers a page, and then it reports back to Google and says, hey, I found a new page yet. Have you discovered this page, or is this a brand new page for you? And if Google goes, hey, we've already got it, it'll check, well, when was our index most recently updated? Or if the spider says, have you found this page? And Google goes, no, we didn't actually know about this page, it'll add it to its index. So if you now imagine Google has a huge catalog of all of the different pages on the internet, all of the different websites. And the way that it discovers these pages is by sending this little spider out there and then having it check back with Google as to whether or not it's been discovered. So now Google has this big index, this big catalog of all of the different pages out there on the web. Now the next step is Google needs to decide, well, what do we actually serve up? And that's where the query software comes in. And how does Google actually determine what is the best result to serve up? So an example here, the Melbourne SEO Services blog. out of all of the different pieces of content out there on the web and inside Google's index and inside Google's catalog, it needs to make a determination as to whether or not it should serve something up. And this is where I suppose the secret sauce, or what's made Google quite unique, is the way in which it determines what is most relevant for a keyword phrase. And that's, I want to kind of dig in a little bit more, but that's the algorithm or the set of rules that Google follows when it says, okay, someone's typed in SEO services blog. What characteristics and criteria do we evaluate a page on to say, hey, let's now serve up this result higher than something else? Now, sometimes people don't actually take a moment to step back and actually think about what Google's doing. Most people, probably 9 out of 10 people out there, they don't even give a second thought to how Google actually calculates this. They just think it's magic, or they think that Google is just making a decision, but they don't really think about why or how it comes to that. And what we want to do is kind of dig a little bit underneath that. So once you understand the thought process, we can then set our website up so it's going to start to appear in the search engines for the right keyword phrases. So the way it actually determines what to serve up, it's a little bit like a popularity contest. And if you imagine this as a metaphor, and there I am right in the middle, if it's a popularity contest, and I want to say, hey, I'm a really popular guy, I can come out there and say, hey, I'm awesome, you should listen to everything that I say, I'm really cool and I'm really popular and everybody loves me. But that's pretty egocentric. That's just me. That's just my word. Of course, I'm going to say that I'm really good. What actually makes my word actually hold any weight? It's when other people say that I'm cool. That's what elevates my level of coolness, quote unquote. Now, let's say that there's the gentleman to the right of me, Old Man Joe. He's some crazy dude who lives down the street, lives underneath a bridge. Nobody really knows who he is. He hasn't really got any friends or family. Now, he thinks I'm cool, and if he comes out and says, hey, Dave's cool, that might make me marginally cooler because I've at least now got an external party saying that I'm cool. But what would actually make me even more cool is if someone who already has is known as someone who's cool, let's say Brad Pitt in this example, if he came out and said, hey, Dave's cool, now his word or his weight is worth more than Old Man Joe's. And the reason for that, and you can see I'm kind of crossing the metaphors there, I'm using those blue circles again. Imagine now that there are other people out there saying that Brad Pitt is cool. So it might be on a different gossip website, or it might be in magazines. A lot of people are talking about Brad Pitt, and because people are talking about Brad Pitt, that popularity is flowing through to Brad Pitt. And then even some of the people talking about Brad Pitt have people talking about them. So it's almost like they're mini authorities in themselves, and then they're passing that coolness factor or that trust level through to Brad Pitt, and then Brad Pitt passes it through to me. So the metaphor there of this popularity contest, your website needs to win in the popularity contest to see Google or to have Google see your website as a popular website that it should bring up when people are looking for a particular type of phrase. So not all links to your website, and when we link this back to your website and start to think about, well, how does someone actually give you a vote of popularity in the online space? Well, a vote of popularity comes from when people link to you, or when people make reference on you on their website. That, in the eyes of Google, is like a vote of popularity. Now, those votes, not all votes are created equal. Some links from some websites, a link from Nufnang is going to be much more valuable from the Nufnang website than it might be from some random blogger on blogger.com who has just written 5 posts and isn't really known by anyone. Because Nufnang website has built up a community and it's got a following and they've got people talking about their website, that now means that their vote is more important because they've kind of built that up. Now, just keeping this in the back of your mind, I'm going to dig down to actually how it works, but I want you to take this metaphor to help you to understand the way that Google actually works. And I'm going to now sort of squash down, just in a real short 10-minute, give you an idea of how SEO actually works. So you can then start to understand the 3 key components and what you need to have in place. So the first component is keywords. Keywords are really central to the web. Keywords actually drives the result. How does Google know what to serve up as the search results or on the search results page? It depends on what people actually type into the search box, the actual phrases. So you need to understand the phrases. You also need to understand what's called on-page SEO. Now that's everything that happens on your website. So it's about choosing the right keywords and then putting it in the right places, the relevant places on your website. So Google goes, oh, this website is about this particular keyword or this phrase. And that's everything that happens on your website. And then there's the second component, which is off-page SEO, which is everything that happens off your website. And that's all about who's linking to you in that popularity contest I was talking about. You know, to get that level of coolness, how can we engineer some of these off-page factors? They're the main 3 categories that you have to understand when understanding SEO. So to dig in a little bit deeper and think about keywords specifically, keywords, Google really changed the game when it came to the way that the web works. Prior to Google, if you have a look there, I've got a screenshot of the Yahoo search engines, and all of the search engines prior to Google were actually the same. They were almost like directories. Rather than having the search box as the main focus, they would have lists of categories. And you can see there, like, if you were looking for something, you might click on, okay, well, you know, I want to find out a little bit about education, or maybe I want to find out about recreation. So I'd click on the recreation and sports tab. And then I'd go, okay, well, I really wanted to find out something about sport. So you'd click on the sports tab. And then, okay, well, I want to find out about Aussie rules football. Okay, so I'd click on the Aussie rules football. And by this process of digging down, drilling down to what I'd want, I would find a list of websites that met that criteria. And up until Google came along, that's the way search engines worked. Google turned that on its head. And what they said is, we don't know what it is that you're looking for until you enter a keyword into the search box. So you can see the Google search box up the top there. There's nothing on the page other than a search box. You have to really define for Google what it is that you're looking for, and then Google will serve up the best result. So with this in mind, that's why it's so important to be choosing your keywords correctly, because the keywords determines what result Google actually serves up. So that first step in good SEO is understanding your keywords and understanding what it is that your target market is searching for. That's really what it starts. If you've got a blog, the first thing that you need to think about is, who do I actually want to be reading my posts? Who do I want to discover my website? Because once you get clear on that picture and you get inside their mind, you can then start to go, well, what is it that they're typing into Google right now? What questions, what problems do they have that they're going to Google to have Google solve? And if you can get into the mind of your potential target market, you can then make sure it's like building a list of keywords that they're looking for, and you can then write content and optimize your content around those phrases. And that's really where SEO begins. And you want to think in terms of, I want to make a distinction between browsing phrases versus very specific phrases. Let's say you've got a blog about baking, and you have a whole lot of different recipes and things like that. You could optimize for a phrase like cakes. Now, cakes is so general and so broad. Is it someone looking for a recipe? Is it someone who wants to find some photos? Someone hasn't even articulated what type of cake they're looking to bake. It's so broad, and you'll have so much competition going against those specific phrases that you really want to drill down deep into a more specific phrase. So an example might be a chocolate mud cake recipe. Now that's me getting in the mind of my target market, understanding what it is that they're looking for, understanding the content that I have that will help solve their problem, and that way I can make sure when someone makes a search, my content matches what they're looking for. That's the ultimate goal. If you can get your great quality content to appear when someone is searching exactly for your piece of content, that's the magical combination, because then people are going to engage in your website. They're going to go, oh, wow, this person gets me. This person has the content that I'm looking for. And that's how you earn and win followers and readership. It's having that right message to market match. It's not just enough to have #1 rankings, though. We need to make sure that we're ranking also for keywords that people are actually searching for. So it's finding that balance between going for a phrase long enough that's quite specific, so I know exactly what they're searching for, but we don't want to go for something so long and so obscure that no one's actually searching for it. So the real art and science in SEO starts by choosing and finding the right keywords that sort of match what the intention is that people are looking for, and making sure that there is enough searches out there. Just to make sure I'm on the right track, Felissa, is all of this sort of clear and at the right, all clear to you?
Yeah, everything's sounding really good. We did have a couple of questions coming in if you want to detour slightly. Just wondering a bit more about keywords. Someone's asking about long tail versus short tail keywords, what they are, and what exactly that means.
Yeah, so a long tail keyword is something that has multiple words in a keyword phrase. So let's say someone is typing something into Google. When I talk about keywords, I'm usually talking about a keyword phrase. So cakes could be considered a keyword, but also chocolate mud cake recipe would be considered a keyword as well. It's more of a phrase, a grouping of keywords. So a long tail keyword phrase would be chocolate mud cake recipe, because it's long tail, as in it's got lots of keywords that make up that phrase. Whereas a short tail would be something like cakes. Now the short tail usually has a lot more competition going after it, and it's because it's got more competition, you'll find it's harder to rank for. But then on the flip side, you can go for something really long tail, but you have to be careful that you don't go for something so long tail that it's so specific that no one's actually searching it. So the difference between short and long short tail is, might be 1 or 2 keywords in a keyword phrase, whereas long tail might have anywhere from 3, 4, 5 keywords in one phrase. Does that make sense?
Right, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think that's it if you want to keep going from here.
Yep. So how do we actually find these keywords? Now, Google's made some changes recently with, they've just recently, a little while ago, you might have seen there was a free keyword tool that people could use for their keyword research for finding good keywords. And if you Googled free keyword tool, it would come up. Now, Google actually blocked this tool recently and made it only available to people who had Google AdWords accounts. Now, there's a bit of a cheeky move on their behalf to try and get people to get an AdWords account. And if you want to go down that route, you still can, and it's free. I mean, you can set up a Google AdWords account, connect your credit card, but you don't have to spend anything. And just by doing that, if you feel comfortable doing that, you'll get access to their tool. They now call it the Keyword Planner tool, and that'll help you find good keywords. That said, though, if you don't want to do that and you still want some easy ways or some quick ways to try and find some good keyword phrases, these longer tail keyword phrases, I've got a couple of tips for you here. One is you can actually go to Google and start typing in a short tail phrase. So it might be cakes, or it could be, again, it depends on your target market. It depends on what it is that they're looking for. Start to type that keyword into Google's search box, and it's got that Google's predict. you know, when it tries to predict and it makes recommendations. So I started typing in SEO services Melbourne. Now it's made some recommendations: SEO agencies Melbourne, SEO providers Melbourne, Melbourne SEO services YouTube. Now those suggestions that it provides can be great keywords to select from. The whole first step in keyword research is finding good keywords that match the content that you've got, that you can use as almost like bait to try and catch the right fish, and the fish being your target market. So we want to make sure we're picking the right bait, and that's a good way to let Google tell us, well, what are some keywords it thinks are relevant and popular. Also, when you do a search, right down the bottom of the search box, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of a search results page, they'll have another phrase here, or a thing you'll see is the searches related to Melbourne SEO services. And then it'll give you some other phrases. Now, some of them aren't going to be the right fit. So, I mean, we can already disqualify Family Getaways Melbourne and Bayview Eden Melbourne Hotel, because that's not my target market anyway, or Melbourne Football Club. But I can have a look at Search Engine Optimization Melbourne, or SEO Consultant Melbourne, or SEO Company Melbourne. There are some other phrases that you might want to pick. So step one is all about thinking about the piece of content you've got and trying to find a keyword that would be a good match. You can also look at, there are tools out there. There's one called Market Samurai that's really great for keyword research. It's a once-off price. I mean, if you're a serious blogger and this is something that you want to do, and understanding that keywords are at the core of the way that search engines work, it might be worth the $100 investment just to get yourself a copy. So, I mean, just Google Market Samurai, and I mean, I've got no affiliation with them, but it's just a great tool that might help. But you can use some of the free tools that I've just mentioned, which is getting Google to tell you themselves. Once you do that, you want to assign one keyword per blog post. So you don't want to have a blog post going after 6 different keywords. Just think in terms of one blog post per keyword. That's step one. And the other thing to keep in mind is Google's sort of making some changes. So the way that it sort of thinks about the web is changing, and I mean, people are starting to use voice searching a lot more. I mean, there's Google Voice, and there's also Siri, which is that application on an iPhone that enables you to ask a question and then Siri will go and answer it for you. So what we're seeing with that is the way that people are interacting with Google search and with the web is people are starting to ask questions. So sometimes a good way of keyword selection is just to actually optimize for the question that people are actually asking. That can be a really effective way to target a keyword. So if someone's looking for, you know, how do I bake a cake, that how to bake a cake could be the keyword that you go after, and it's more phrased like a question, but that's kind of how people are starting to interact with the web more. It's just starting to get you to think about the right things. Once you figure out the keyword that you want to target, then it's about putting the keyword in the right places. So you've chosen a keyword, and it's one keyword per page, and you'll start off by putting it in your title, your description, your URL, your blog title, and your body content. Now, I've taken a screen capture of our blog over at Melbourne SEO Services, and I've underlined some of those areas so you know where it is, and I'll give you a plugin that can actually help you do this a little bit later in the presentation. But I just wanted to get your head around the idea that once you've chosen a keyword, you want to make sure that you put it in the title, and that's the first underlined area on that graphic to the right up the top there in the top of the browser. That's your title. Then the next one down is your URL, and I know I've got description next, but the next one down in the graphic is the URL. It's good to get the keyword in there. Then it's good to have it in the actual blog title, and that's the second one, how to create the website user experience. So you can see that's the keyword I'm going after, website user experience. And then it's good to have it in the body content, which is you know, down in that underlined. I've got it as a link there, but I've also got it in the copy, the actual blog post itself. You want to have the keyword at least mentioned in there. Now, I want to avoid giving you real specifics where people go, what keyword density, how many keywords per blog posts should I do? How many times should I be trying to put it in the title or the description? As a general rule, just put it once in your title, once in your description, once in your blog title, and at least a couple of times inside your content. There's no real hard and fast rules here. You want to write naturally. And the real key takeaway here is you want to optimize for the user. You don't optimize for the search engines. Search engines come second, because we want to make sure when the user gets there, they have a good user experience. I don't want someone to land on your website and have it say in the title, cake recipes, cake recipes, cake recipes. And then in the description, are you looking for the best cake recipes on the web? Well, you're in luck. You've found the biggest cake recipes listing. Click here for all of the cake recipes you can find. Now that feels pretty unnatural, and it doesn't provide a very good user experience. And ultimately, what does Google want? They want to provide a good user experience. So the key takeaway here, or the secret, is optimize for the user first, and then let Google kind of step in. As long as you follow my rules of thumb, choosing good keywords, putting them in the relevant places that I mentioned, and I'll chat with Felissa to make sure that the PowerPoint, or I will turn the PowerPoints into a PDF so that you can have access to this after the call, and you can just use my slides as a reference point to make sure that you're putting the keywords in the right place. Then the next part is what I'm considering the new on-page SEO. Traditional off-page SEO is what I talked about up until this point, which is choosing a keyword and putting it in the relevant places. But we are seeing a little bit of a change in the way that Google actually works and the way the web works. Google is now, they're wanting to remove this idea of the anonymous web. They want people to start putting their hand up and saying, hey, I'm the author of this piece of content. And to do that, they're actually linking together their Google Plus pages. Now, you may or may not have heard of Google Plus. It's just now, I mean, it's not nearly obviously as big as Facebook, but it's Google's play at trying to enter in the social space. And we've kind of passed the point of no return here for Google. They've decided that social is important, and Google Plus is their play at social. They're not letting go of it, and they've so firmly ingrained the success of Google, and I mean, Google even has for its employees, they've tied their bonuses and the success or the bonus for them for the year to the success or failure of Google Plus. So that's a real clear message Google is sending to their team internally that, hey, Google Plus is here, Google Plus is here to stay, and it's going to be really important on the future of web and the future of search. Now, at the moment, Matt Cutts, who is Google's spokesperson, has come out and said, look, there's no direct impact on search results based on Google Plus ones and authorship. That said, though, we're seeing a really high correlation between high-ranking websites and those that receive plus ones and having authorship assigned. So although it might not be important now, the writing is on the wall that it's really important for you to start to get authorship set up for your blog. Now, it's a pretty simple process. You just have to set yourself up a Google Plus page, and Felissa's already asked me following this to perhaps do a more in-depth post on the Nufnang website that kind of takes you through the step-by-step on how to set up Google authorship, because it's really important. And you might have seen sort of Google authorship already appearing in the search results and not even noticed it. You can see a little listing there from my site, davidjenyns.com. That's my personal blog. And you can see my photo, how it appears next to my listing there. That's actually a screenshot that I took from Google search results. Now, that is an example of authorship in play. Google has now assigned authorship to my website and said, oh, all posts that come from this website, David Jenyns is the author, and I've set up a Google Plus account, and now I've linked that to my blog. Now, as I said, it's an easy process, and I'll get a blog post to walk you through it. But for those overachievers who want to get onto it straight away, you can actually check out a plugin, and on the next slide I'll give you the URL. It's Yoast. It's a plugin for WordPress. If you don't have WordPress, then there are other ways to do this, but if you've got a WordPress blog, this is the easiest way to do it. It's just a plugin, so search for Yoast WordPress SEO. It's a free plugin, which is cool, and it's really well done. But inside the settings, and I've got a few links there you can see, you can actually select the author. What you need to do is first go set yourself up a Google Plus page. It's free. Once you've done that, you then come into your WordPress and you assign the author to your Google Plus page. And then all you need to do is add your page to your Google Plus profile, and then that's it. Give it a week or two, Google will discover it, and then it'll link up your authorship. It really is that easy. You can find out more about that plugin. It's at yoast.com/WordPress/SEO. And it also helps with what I was talking about before with regards to those titles, descriptions, and meta keywords. It's got some extra things in there to enable you to take, like I was saying, choose a keyword per post and then put it in the relevant places. So that's kind of the first two components of good SEO. So it's choosing the right keywords, putting it in the right places on your website, which is OnPage SEO, and the new form of OnPage SEO, which I talked about, which is authorship. Now, the final component is this off-page SEO. And that's all about, you already know the metaphor. How do we increase our popularity? Now, that has to do with getting links back to your website. So you can see here some different screenshots from different websites linking through to other websites. And that's me giving votes to other websites. So what you want to try and do is try and see how you can, once you create content, how can you get other people talking about you or posting about you on their website. Now, you can do this by doing guest posts. You can do this by commenting on the Nufnang community websites. Down there, you can actually, sometimes you'll get a link back to your website, engaging in certain forums. Some forums will link back to you. There's a whole lot of different ways that you can start to get your links back to your website. And that's really the second part of off-page SEO. Now, people started to try and game the search engines. When they realized, hey, this is how Google works, people went out and started to manipulate the on-page SEO and the off-page SEO. And Google then started to evolve and go, hang on, we can see what you're doing here. You're trying to manipulate the search engines. And you may have heard of some of these updates. There was the Penguin update, there's the Panda update, and most recently there was even one called Hummingbird. Now, Penguin targeted all of the dodgy practices that people were doing with off-page SEO, all of the link building. And when you try and heavily manipulate your link building, that was causing people's websites to get hit. Panda had a lot to do with people who were trying to manipulate on-page SEO. So they were doing keyword stuffing, and they were trying to put, too many keywords. They were doing that thing I was talking about before, which was, the keyword might have been best cake recipes, and in the title it's best cake recipes, best cake recipes, best cake recipes. That type of practice Google squashed down on with the Panda update. So what's the takeaway here? The real key is always come back to what's the objective here. Google wants to have the best user experience. So they want to make sure that you're not trying to manipulate the search engines. So just create good quality content that chooses one keyword and you just put it naturally into your content. If you do that, you'll be fine. When it comes to link building, just be natural and don't really heavily try and manipulate the search engines. And the Hummingbird update was all about that change. I was saying that Google's starting to recognize that people interact more with the web by asking questions. Now, that's just a relatively new update, a new change, but the more that you can involve questions in your optimization, the better, because that's the way that people are searching the web these days. So when it comes to Penguin, that update as far as off-page optimization, it's all about making sure that you act natural. Just don't make sure you're building links from a variety of sources with a variety of different places, a variety of different anchor texts, so linking back to you with different keywords, not always the same keyword, to a variety of different destinations. Don't just point your links through to the home page, point it through to deep pages. So if you're posting on a forum to get a link back to your website, make sure that you link to the most relevant page. Don't always link through to your home page. Maybe you've got a specific piece of content that answers that question. So it's all about acting natural. Now, I've got here, this is more of a reference point, and that's why you want to get these slides back. this is kind of a visual representation by a website called SEO Moz, which they've actually recently renamed to Moz. But here are the different factors that you need to take into account when thinking about SEO. Right down the bottom, it's all about getting your website well set up. Now, if you've got a WordPress blog, you don't need to worry too much about that. That kind of happens naturally by WordPress. WordPress is really smart by making sure that you're correctly structured. Then there's the keyword research, which I talked about, and all of that on-page optimization. Then above that, you've got your link building, which is all about, getting your content out there and links back to your website. And then the final piece, which is getting more and more important, is that social engagement, which I was talking about, and why Google Plus is more important. So this is for the overachiever who wants to dig in. I've given you the real broad brush strokes, and if you just follow that, you're going to be head and shoulders above the competition. Where most bloggers go wrong, the real things to watch out for is just making sure Google loves unique content. So don't have overly duplicate content on your website. Don't be copying and pasting other people's articles. It's okay to have a few things copied and pasted, but the vast majority should be unique. They love authorship, so set up that Google Plus, as I talked about, get that Yoast plugin, and start to involve social signals. That's a small part now, but it will become more and more important as time goes on. What don't they like? This is where most bloggers go wrong. They do that keyword stuffing I talked about. They do duplicate content. They'll have the same titles and the same descriptions for every single page. Google doesn't like that. And also, often a lot of people go wrong by doing very ad-heavy websites. So what I'm talking about there, it's good to have ads, and I mean that's just part of the way that web works, but you don't want to have one of those websites where everything above the fold, everything that you can see visually when you first hit a website is all an ad. That's not a good idea. It's good to use something like, the Nafnang widget where it's off to the side and you've still got your great quality content which is in the middle, and then you're serving ads, relevant ads around that good quality content. So just make sure that you don't have an overly ad-heavy website. So the action steps from here, from listening to this session or this little mini SEO bootcamp. Step one is, firstly, optimize your website for keywords. Have a look at all of the content that you've got and pick out your 20 most popular blog posts and actually think about what keywords would be most relevant for them, and then put those keywords in the relevant places. That's your first action step. Ultimate goal is to optimize your entire website, but start off with 20. Then step two is set yourself up a Google Plus page and get that Yoast SEO plugin so you can get your authorship set up. And then start to review your website for the usability and best practice. Make sure that you haven't got, duplicate content. Make sure that you're not just have an ad-heavy website. Make sure that you've got good contact details and information on your website. Really think about your user first, because that's ultimately what you're optimizing for. Now, for the Super Blogger bonus round is something that you might consider. I know most bloggers think about writing, and they're really heavily focused on writing blog posts, but I just wanted to float the idea of maybe consider adding an extra string to your bow and seeing some other ways that you might drive traffic. So as you start to build up your profile inside Google, you can also start to lean on YouTube. These are what I'd consider low-hanging fruit right now. You can drive some great traffic from YouTube and also some great traffic from iTunes. And it's just about building up your audience base and delivering content to them in another channel. Again, I don't want to drill too deeply into that, other than just to mention it's a great idea to diversify, and it's also just another extra string that you can add to that bow, and it's that low-hanging fruit right now. You can get some quick wins. SEO is getting more and more competitive. It's still a must-do, and all of the principles that I talked about for optimizing content, you should do the same for YouTube. When you post a YouTube video, still pick a keyword, still put it in your title and your description. All of that process remains the same. So you already understand the basics. It's just an extra thing that you can add to what you're doing. So I think now I'll hand back to Valissa to see if she's got any specific questions that kind of floated up out of that presentation.
Yes, thank you, Dave. That was awesome. We've had a lot of questions coming in, so hopefully, I know we're a bit late here, but hopefully we can get through everyone's questions. There was a lot of interest in Google authorship, but you've already said that you're going to do another write-up of that afterwards, which I think people will be really excited to see. Some
Yeah.
questions related to keywords. We had a lot of those coming in. Um, some people were wondering, let's see, if it's possible to go back through old posts to optimize for keywords, or is it better just to start from where you're at and move forward with it?
If you haven't done any optimization in the past, it's better to go back with your old posts because you've already got content ready to go. And next time that Google sends their little spider out to crawl your website, it'll report back to Google and it'll say, hey, this page has changed. You should update your index. So it's actually good practice to go back and do this to all of your old posts. And you might even get some quick wins that way because you've already got the content. And it might be a way to, quickly get some traffic through to the site or some rankings.
Mhm. And if you have a good keyword, if you find one really good keyword that you want to rank for, is it better to use that in more than one post, or is it actually, well, could that be ineffective?
It's okay if you find it's really good. I would say, you can optimize maybe two or three at most bits of content for the same keyword, but you're actually going to be better off finding other keywords around that keyword. So if you go, hey, this keyword's doing really well for me, find keywords that are similar and very related and optimize your content for that. And then on those new posts that you optimize or create content around, link back to that original post with the keyword that you want to rank for. So it's almost like you're using your internal linking to try and boost up those rankings.
That's a great suggestion. See, Janet was asking, is there a difference in how Google will weigh a page versus a post? I know that's a bit confusing for a lot of bloggers since you usually have multiple
Yeah.
posts on a single page.
So inside WordPress, and this is more of a WordPress terminology, they have two areas. They have pages, which are almost like these one-off pages that you create on your site, whereas a post typically is the actual, the content within your blog. So in the eyes of Google, it sees it as the same thing. Google actually doesn't see a difference between a page and a post. So you should optimize your pages in the same way that you optimize your posts.
Okay. I had another question based on the previous question was going back through old posts and updating for keywords. The follow-up question is asking if it's better to republish that post with a new date, delete the old post, or just edit the actual post and leave it with the original post date.
Um, if you feel like it's going to disrupt the reading, for example, if you're doing a post and then you update the date, that's going to shift it all the way back up to the top. If you've got a large audience, that might be frustrating for them because they think it's a new post, but it's not really a new post. So I would probably say keep the date the same. That said, though, Google recently, and they keep on changing their algorithm and rules, they have been favoring recently fresh content. So if you do update it and you update the date, it may perform better inside Google. So let's say the content is really, really old. Then I might suggest updating the date. If it's relatively new, so maybe anything less than 6 months, I'd probably stick and leave the date the same. And if you've got a massive audience who's been following you for a long time, I would probably say maybe don't change the date because you might kind of frustrate them because they're like, hang on, I've already seen this. You're just recycling old content.
That's great advice. Another question that came in was you mentioned how Google will use their, so-called spider to crawl the sites for content. How often does Google crawl? And if you have new content, how long would you expect for it to take to be found?
So it depends on how popular your blog is. If every time that Google comes back, if it always sees a change, it'll start to come back more frequently. So some of the more busy sites could get crawled as much as multiple times a day because they know every time they come back, there's a change. Some less frequented blogs, Google might come there and then they might go, well, there's been no update for 3 months. Okay, next time I'm going to come back and it's going to be 4 months. Um, I mean, not that it ever goes that long. Typically, it's shorter than that. But if you're in a process of updating regular content, Google will almost train itself to come back frequently. So there's a reason for updating your content frequently. Another way, though, let's say that you haven't been updating your content very much, but you're really keen for Google to come back. Another sneaky way for you to get Google's attention is to post it on your Google Plus page. Google is crawling Google Plus constantly. So if you make a new post and you feel like your site hasn't been crawled or updated, you could post it on your Google Plus, and that'll guarantee that Google will come to it straight away. And another thing you can do, another technique for the more advanced users, if you set yourself up an account with Google Webmaster Tools, it's a free thing that you can actually add to your site. I mean, just Google it. It's relatively easy to set up, if you know how, kind of thing. But you can actually find out, it'll tell you inside there when Google is crawling your website. So, I mean, for your advanced Google Webmaster Tools, for your medium level people, it's probably best to just post on Google Plus, or if you're a very frequent blogger, you probably don't need to worry about it.
That's great. How would you recommend, once everyone started implementing these tips you've given today, how would you recommend that they measure their success to see if the keywords are working for them?
Yeah, so one thing that you can do is you should have Google Analytics installed. Google's made a recent change, probably in the last week, where they've actually mentioned that all organic search is going 100% secure, which means that all referring keywords will now display inside your analytics as not provided, which is frustrating. Again, it's Google's play to push people into AdWords. That said, though, to measure the success, you can have a look inside your Google Analytics and look for the growth in organic traffic. So that's one measure of success. And the other thing that you might have a look at, some different blogging platforms have analytics tools. I think they will become more popular, especially since in the last week or so, Google has said that they're going to be blocking a lot of that keyword data. And I don't have a recommendation right off the top of my head, but I can look into it, because in the past we've just been recommending Google Analytics. That said, though, you could probably find a plugin that will log the referring keywords for you. So that way you can start to see which keywords are referring traffic through to your website. And again, that's a great way to help you choose future keywords as well, because if you're performing well with one keyword, why not write content around similar keywords, similar and related keywords?
That's great. All right, and this will be the last question. I apologize, everyone, we're going a bit over here. We'll try to hurry through. Last question. In your opinion, is it better to have a static front page, your latest post, or a combination of both?
I would probably say a combination is best, particularly for a blog. A blog is all about updating content and having fresh, and for your audience when they come back, for them to actually see that you're constantly updating. Now,
sorry, Dave, if you can just speak up a little bit.
Yeah, I would think it's probably best to have a combination of both. On Melbourne SEO services, we've chosen our best, most popular post, and that's actually set as a static page in our blog, but then we also have the regular updating content as well. Now, that's probably because for us it's more relevant. We're selling a service and products, so I want to have that real clear message when someone gets on my blog. But it depends on your audience. I think typically 9 out of 10 times for most bloggers listening to this, you're probably better off going for your most up-to-date content, because that's what's going to keep your viewers and readers coming back.
Great. Well, I think that's all the time we've got for Q&A at the moment. Dave, if you want to go on to the next slide.
Yeah, do the final wrap-up. If you guys want to find out a little bit more, obviously SEO is a pretty deep topic, and it's got some great benefits for your blog when you get it right and you get those basics down. If you want to find out more, I have got a course called the SEO Method 3. It's the third time that we've run this, and I've got all of the content in there. Everything that I know about SEO is pretty much in this course. It sells on the site for $400, but for the Nuffnang community, Velissa's asked me to put together something special for you guys. So you can use the coupon code. So when you go to the link melbourneseoservices.com/nuff, that'll take you through to the SEO Method 3 page. You can learn all about the product. And when you hit the order button, there's an area where you can edit the coupon code NUFNANG, and that'll adjust the price down. It's about 50% off. So I'm just going to keep that open for a small window, and it's just for you guys, and so you can check it out. It basically is SEO in a nutshell. It's also a bit more than that as well. I try and teach about online marketing and what's important to build up a successful website. So you can check out that. Again, it'll probably go out in the email that will accompany the replay for this webinar, or you can note it down now. melbourneseoservices.com/NUF, and then the coupon code is NUFNANG. Now, if you've got any further questions, obviously I explain a lot more in the SEO Method 3, but you don't have to buy the course. If you want, there's plenty of free content over at my YouTube channel, which I've listed on the site, or if you want to ask specific questions, you can go to my Twitter account and you can follow me and then tweet me a question, and I'll happy to respond. Or you can head over to Melbourne SEO Services and submit a question, or even once I do the guest post on the NUFNANG site, post a comment. I'll be active over there, and I'll make sure that I do my very best to get all of your questions answered. But that was pretty much everything that I wanted to cover for today. So I don't know if there's any final things that you want to mention, Melissa?
No, I really appreciate all your contributions today. This has been a really great presentation. For all of you joining us, we are recording today. We'll have a video replay of this available hopefully by tomorrow on the NUFNANG blog. So if you missed anything or you want to go back through and review some notes, we'll have both that and the slides available for you. So I hope you'll all thank David for joining us today. Give us a big shout on Twitter, and we'll see you on our next webinar.
Cool. Thanks. Catch you later.
Thanks so much, Dave.